aligning the chakras with self-love, because honestly, this is the basis of it. Like, if we are not feeling self-love and self-worth.
Welcome to Finding Your Spark again. I have with me today Jenny Mannion, here to talk to me about the easy way to find self-love, energy, and unlimited power. Wow, that's a list, Jenny. I can't wait to hear from you. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful to be here with you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I am really excited to hear about your perspective on this because I know that you know a lot about energy, the energy systems of the body and beyond. And I feel like that's something that we discount often. We say, oh, well, I want to feel joy. I want to feel happiness. And therefore, I'm going to do something that is emotional or mental or physical. And that doesn't cut it all the time. So let's start there.
Yeah, and I guess the first thing that came to me when you were saying that was even like the simple example of the body. Like, we don't pay attention to our body unless something goes wrong. Yet this body is this miraculous, part of us that is running umpteen systems at a time every day. And we're not expressing gratitude. We're not really present with it. Unless something's wrong, then we're present with it. So it really is about like being present is where all the power is, first of all. And it's not really about the doing. It's more about the being. How are we feeling in this moment? And giving love for that moment. I thank my body every morning when I wake up, thanking your body in the shower. Thank you, body, for running all these systems for me today. Like, really putting our attention on the things that do go well, that go without us even thinking about them. It really changes our perspective. It changes our energy for the day, just recognizing that we do have these little gifts that are given to us every day, but we tend to want more. We're like, hey, I want more. I want more of this or more of that. But really, gratitude is kind of the key to getting more and receiving more, because we're noticing, we're showing love and appreciation for right where we are right now. And it's almost like we're opening the door for more goodness to come in.
I am so glad that you're bringing up attention and appreciation, because I feel like those two are a dynamic duo, right? And a lot of times we look at the people who are someone has shined a light on in our society and said, this is somebody who is a high achiever in this way or that way or another way. And we go, yeah, that's what I want. That's what I want. But we don't know that what they did to do it. We always talk about this sort of like, what are you willing to do to get there, right? And we think that means hard work and, not eating and not sleeping and, sort of ignoring the body. But in fact, to be able to maintain those positions that many of the people we admire in the world maintain, they've got to be able to put their attention and their appreciation on their body and on their immediate environment.
Absolutely. And joy is such an important piece too. You see Richard Branson, he's out, he's out doing sports and doing activities he loves. Like, it really is about what fills you with joy. It's really not, oh, when I have this much money, then I can take time off and appreciate life. And no, like, what can you do today? You can dance around your kitchen, blast your favorite song. Like, you can, go out for a walk in nature. You could take a couple of breaths. You can have a long, slow cup of tea, and just really be present with the taste of it. Like, there's so many little things we can do to invite joy in, and that does show appreciation. It does show appreciation of that present moment, which really does invite in more. It changes our energy up, so we're vibrating higher, and we can bring more good stuff in. We're actually like throwing the door open and inviting stuff in. I know a lot of my clients will get very caught up in the self-development journey, and that's wonderful. It's always wonderful. We're working on ourselves, but it can become really seem like we're very judgy of ourselves. Oh, you didn't do that right, and you need to work on this still. But really, joy is as important. And I have told some clients, like, hey, you are not allowed to bring any self-development books on vacation. You're there for joy, just to experience, to be present, to really honor ourselves is as important, if not even more important than doing that inner work.
There was a lot in that to unpack here a little, and I really want to, because I feel like talking about joy in this way where we remember that it isn't a weapon to beat ourselves with, and to say, well, if you were more joyous, and this, I have a lot of people in my world who are related to the law of attraction, and sometimes people can use that to really abuse themselves, even though there is nothing in it that indicates that one should do that. Okay.
Right.
But to say to yourself, hey, I am responsible for my experience, doesn't mean that you have to beat on yourself for everything that happens in the world. It just means that taking responsibility for this moment and your reaction to it and your ability to kind of stream yourself into this lifetime, right, it makes a more enjoyable experience. So even the way you said, I told my friend not to bring the books, a lot of people say, well, I like the books. Yes, but you are using them to beat yourself over the head with, right? And to say, I will just be present. It's going to be me and that sand under my feet and the sound of the ocean. And that's what I'm going to, or me and those giant pine trees and my hiking boots, right? Whatever it is, that it is your space where you're willing to be really, really present. And that's where joy is found. Honestly, it's the only place joy is found, is in connection to your soul.
You said that beautifully. And it is like, what connects you to that soul? What connects you to that childlike spirit where, yeah, I mean, for me, I do love blasting music and dancing around my house. Like that brings me joy.
Oh my gosh, I
love...
gotta tell you this story. I just have to interrupt you because so the first time you said it, it popped right into my head, and I was like, that is not something we're talking about on the podcast. You could just leave that story, and then you brought it up again, and I was like, yes, we get to tell this story. So I have a friend who has several children, and when one of her kids was maybe 5 or 6, I was visiting, and she said to her child, you have to turn the music off. It's time to go to bed or whatever. And, or it's quiet time, I think it was. And, the child got so upset. And so I said to her, well, what's the problem? And she said, well, I can't hear the music. I said, really? Really? You can't hear the music? She said, well, maybe I can. And she used her imagination to tune in to what she wanted to be happening in her head. And so when you started talking about, I love to blast the music, there's a certain freedom of like, I don't even need to be able to afford speakers to be able to do that, right? All I need is my imagination and my willingness to focus in the direction of something super fun and then let my body do it.
Absolutely. I love that story. Yeah. And I mean, some people, it's like putting on your favorite song and, singing in the car as loud as you can.
That's right. To find a space where you can let some of the energy start flowing.
Yeah. And there are so many different ways. And it doesn't have to be, I know sometimes too, we can get in our head even in the way like we express joy. Like when I was writing my book, writing's very joyful for me, but I was getting in my head, I need an hour of peace and quiet. I need an hour of peace and quiet, to be able to concentrate and write. And, I talked to an author friend of mine. They're like, no, grasp any moment you have. And honestly, like when I'm in flow, I can write more in 5 minutes sometimes than if I force myself to sit down and write. So really being playful with ourselves, not making so many rules, like really just, I feel like guided to drive this way instead of that way, like really just being in the moment and being free with ourselves instead of so regimented. We're the only one that can hear that inner voice, so we're the only one that can change that inner voice. And that's such a critical part to really kind of living in that freedom and feeling that joy and present moment.
I like that you're bringing up the sense of freedom here, because I think a sense of freedom is really how we reach for that, right? How so if I'm just living from inspiration and my everyday is filled with thoughts and emotions that are around how terrible my job is and how much I really wish my spouse was different and how my kids were almost doing better, and right. So when you surround yourself with that kind of thinking and then you get an inspiration, the feeling of inspiration, unfortunately you get inspired to things that are not going to help you. They're going to bring more of that. And so this sense of freedom, of being willing to tap into, a lot of people talk about it in terms of meditation. They talk about it in terms of quieting the mind. But I think actually reaching for the sense of freedom in your body and mind is almost a more accurate description of that, before we allow that inspiration to come.
Yeah, I mean, it is, there are so many different ways to really focus on the present moment. I do love, I meditate daily. I love that. I love drumming. That's a great way to like take my mind out of it and just be in the present moment. I mean, whatever it is, but that joy is really, you are, again, you're really focusing on that appreciation, and that brings freedom. You're really focusing on the present moment and what this connection to doing this brings you. So many, I know I've talked to so many like clients that have stopped drawing or stopped painting or put that aside. Oh, I don't have time for that, and made all these rules in their head where it's like you can doodle, you can doodle for 5 minutes and sketch for 5 minutes. Like it doesn't have to be, we're the only ones saying, oh, it has to be a masterpiece or it has to look a certain way, and judging ourselves, really giving ourselves the freedom to just be, just be, the more you do doodle, the more maybe you'll be like, hey, this is kind of cool. Maybe I will get the sketchbook out, or maybe I will do this next step. But it's really taking those first steps to really giving yourself that permission to express that joy, even if it's, I hear, I'm too busy for my hobbies that I used to have. But it doesn't have to be hours and hours a day. If you do 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, there's all there's like Duolingo online, where you learn a language in 5 minute snippets a day. Like there's so many things we can do in little windows of time, rather than numbing out with, whatever it is we do to numb out, pick up the computer and play a game or do, watch something mindless on YouTube. Like we can really focus on something that's going to bring us joy, and it's like it fills us up, it changes our energy, it changes our vibration.
Yes, that's great. And so I know that you do work, because I read your website, around the chakras, right? The
Yes.
energetic systems of the body. So let's talk a little bit about how that contributes to that reaching for joy that you're talking about. Because these are great tips in terms of, I think we've had some great tips in terms of, physical things we can do. We can not turn on the things that numb us, and we can take that 5 minutes. We can look for those little openings in our world for the things that help us to find joy. But let's talk a little bit about that energy system.
Yeah, and I mean, I have a free mini course on like aligning the chakras with self-love, because honestly, this is the basis of it. Like if we are not feeling self-love and self-worth, we're not going to give ourselves permission for that joy. And it does start with that root chakra, the first chakra. Like what are your messages that you received from your parents, and your community about joy? Have you been told you need to work 16-hour days and joy is like only for vacation 2 weeks, 2 weeks out of the year? Do you feel comfortable, really expressing your joy? Do you feel safe on this planet to express your joy? I mean, these are all the first chakra, what you're holding there. The second chakra is important. It's how we see ourselves as men and women, and sexuality. Are we comfortable feeling passion? Are we allowing ourselves that joy? So many people feel stuck there. They don't feel safe expressing that. Third chakra, is our solar plexus. That's our power center. that, that can be an internal struggle of, do we feel, are we open to really expressing ourselves, or do we feel like we have to be in control all the time? Oh, I can't dance around the living room, like my neighbors might look in, like how free are you to really like just be like, I don't care, like be in your power and really emulate that. And the fourth chakra is really the most important about that, like self-love and self-worth, and receiving that divine love and feeling, yeah, I'm worthy of joy every day. Yeah, I'm claiming it every day, and one of the first things I'll suggest to people is writing a list of 10 things that bring yourself joy, and connecting with that every day. Have it somewhere where you can see it. So if you go to that like self-sabotaging pattern or that little space, like you can look at that list, or even the boredom space, and be like, I'm going to do one of these things, that takes 5 minutes. I'm going to go outside and take some deep breaths. I'm going to put on that song that makes me sing along or dance. Fifth chakra is about communication and creativity. So how do you express your joy creatively? For me, it's writing and it's dance, it's speaking, it's being on show, interviews like this. Like this brings me a lot of joy. How do you creatively express yourself? Six chakras and your intuition, your third eye chakra. I always look at it, how do you see the world and how do you see your inner self? Like those inner and outer binoculars. And how are you allowing yourself to really tap into the truth of what brings you joy? What feels good for you to express intuitively, what comes into you, and seventh is our connection to everything, which is so beautiful. We are all connected, and receiving that divine guidance, receiving that I'm going this way and not that way, receiving that like little nudge from the universe. So I mean, they are all really important, and when they're out of balance, we're going to feel it, whether it's emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. It'll manifest in different ways. But just being able to tune into our energy centers really does inform us of where we can maybe use a little balance in our lives.
Hmm. Yeah, I visualized it as you were talking about it, and that sense of like energy lighting up in the body is a real connector to our emotional responses, right? So, because there are emotions around each of these chakras when they're out of balance, right? And when they're in balance, we get to choose. We get to decide how we're going through the world, right? But when they're out of balance, then there may be anger that we don't anticipate, and didn't really feel like it came from us. It felt like it came from the outside world, and we are just have to be in it. Or there can be on the other end of it, right? If we reach for it, joy, connection, self-love, ease of energy in our bodies, all of those things when we're in balance and when we're focused on those upper chakras, which is kind of interesting because we spend a lot of time in this world focused on those lower chakras, don't we?
Sure do. We sure do. The upper ones definitely can give us more freedom and more allowance to balancing those lower ones. The more we step into self love, the more we can feel more in our own power, with the third chakra, the more we can feel more comfortable expressing passion through our second chakra, the more we won't care as much about the messages we got from our, community or family, or we realize they're not our truth, and we can transmute those, and we don't have to buy into them and repeat them to ourselves over and over again. So it's so important to tap into those upper chakras, and really it's almost like a freeing of ourselves when we do.
So, what happens when we are in a position where we're kind of unable to reach for self love, unable to reach for those feelings of what I call above the line and below the line? And I know a lot of people kind of use that terminology for emotions, but for me, it's really about below the line, we're producing stress hormones, and above the line, we're producing chemicals that help us to feel good and to heal and to do all the other things. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I really believe in easy, short tools. Like I believe in, putting our hands on our heart and doing some box breathing. So that's breathing in for 4, holding for 4, exhaling for 4, and holding for 4. If you do a couple of rounds of that, that really brings you back to center. That was the breathing that was taught to Navy SEALs to calm them down. So, I mean, if it works for them when they're out, in the trenches, it will probably work for us,
Pretty
because
high stress job. Yeah.
yeah, pretty high
Yeah.
stress Or I love too, like putting your hands on your heart and like closing your eyes and recalling a happy moment. Because we have no problem taking ourselves over and over to those coulda, woulda, shoulda moments or the most traumatic moments in our lives. But putting your hand on your heart and bringing in a memory with every sense. What did it look like? What did it feel like? Were there smells involved? Were there sounds involved? Like really allowing ourselves, and it feels like almost like a guilty pleasure for some reason, yet we have no problem like reliving the horrible stuff, but really bringing that in, or bringing in gratitude for someone we love, whether it be a human or a furry being in our life that we love. Sometimes it's easier to bring in the love for the furry beings because they're they're unconditional love, so really to put our hands in our hearts and just, it's really up to us to tell ourselves things are okay, and when we start spiraling, when we get into that worry loop, like it can feel like things are anything but okay. But if we can like grasp that second, and be like, you know what, I'm going to decide for the next 5 minutes, let me just try something else. There's also the Richard Dots method of worry. Like you can worry for 5 minutes, set a timer, and then be like, worried about that today, done, putting that aside. Nothing's going to get solved from that place of worry or the downward spiral. It really is in those moments of presence, of joy, of, that inspiration can come and you can figure out a problem actually like in an instant. Whereas if you're focused on this is a problem, this is a problem, oh no, this is a problem, like that is not flow. That's like you tightened up like that. That's not allowing energy to flow and things to come to you. So really giving ourselves like just that, and even if it's like staring at a flame, you can imagine all the like worries melting in the flame. Or I love like making little writing things down that I'm ready to release and putting them to the fire. There's so many like little tools, but get your toolbox, like get gaining a lot of the little tools so that when you're in a moment, you can access that. You can be like, okay, I'm pulling out this one now. I love the prayer Ho'oponopono is one of my favorite prayers, and tools because it's so simple. Like you can say those 4 sentences, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. To say that to yourself and know that, okay, the story's running in my head. The story's running in my head. I don't want this running in my head. Like, I love you. I'm sorry. I'm finding it so hard to get out of this loop. Please forgive me. Thank you. I mean, our soul is that unconditional love. So having those tools, if you need to write them down, so you can go to them when you're in a time of crisis or you're feeling yourself dip into that. But really giving ourselves that permission to go to those places, go to those happy places, go to that, the gratitude and the things that are good. We can get very distracted, especially these days with the stuff that seems not right, but we can only control how we react. You mentioned that before, how we react, how we're what information are we taking in? What are we doing for ourselves to help ourselves get through the day and make ourselves excited about the day? Not just getting through the day, but excited about the day.
That toolbox comment is really, really important. In my group, Joy Healings, we talk a lot about the toolbox. And I think you brought up something really important about it in that each tool isn't always available to us. And it also isn't always like energetically available to us. And it isn't always comfortable, right? So if you can do a specific breathing because that feels like, yes, I can do that in this moment, even though I feel overwhelmed or worried or stressed, then you've got something. But if that's your only tool, and you've gotten yourself into high anxiety, then you're going to be in real trouble, right? Because that's, you can't do it with just one tool, right? Or you've gotten yourself into pretty good feeling and you want to get to the next level. Maybe that's not going to be the tool that gets you there. So I love that you're talking about that and sort of bringing up that if we, the same way that we learned in school, right? We learned in grammar school and in high school, and if other people went on from there, we learned all these tools for how to get along in the world, and building that toolbox for your mental and emotional and spiritual journey is just as important, even though it's not a part of our traditional education.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes we do become like why I have my clients write a list of all these things is sometimes we become like that kind of stubborn little toddler, teenager, arms crossed. But I don't feel like saying Ho'opono right now. Like, we become almost like self-sabotaging beings where we need that big toolbox. We need to be able to pick out what is in energetic alignment with us in that moment, that's going to fill us with joy. That's going to feel
Go
soothing
through
for
that.
us in that moment.
Yeah, go through that crack of least resistance.
Yes.
Crack keeps moving. gotta have something to go through it. Oh, that's great. That's great. You brought up Ho'oponopono, and I just want to say, for me, I have used it in times personally, in addition to with my clients, that have absolutely changed my life. And so that being willing, finding that willingness to learn some tools, and finding that willingness to find the person to actually teach you some tools and to help you figure out what's going to be in your toolbox. My husband passed away about a year ago, and when I was cleaning out the garage, there was a lot that was in his toolbox, right? Because he was literal. I'm talking about a literal toolbox for building things, right? Mm-hmm. And he did that all the time, and I didn't do much of that. And then I found this bag that was heavy leather bag that I had before I met him. I had that bag with my tools in it. And I thought, oh, this is interesting because it's a moment for me to determine, are these the tools that are going to carry me forward? Or do I need to augment these tools, right? And so even in that very literal way, if we take those examples in our lives and then translate them into how am I going to find joy, right? What are my tools to find feeling better today? What are my tools to be able to, you referred to it earlier, I always think of it as those dishwashing moments, when we're washing the dishes and there's nothing going on. There's plenty going on, right? Yeah, but it feels like there's
not
nothing
very positive either.
That's right. That's right. Whatever our set point is, wherever we are in that kind of general space, that's what's going on up there. And most of the time, you're right, it is some recollection of something that happened 3 days ago when that lady said, and I don't think that was fair. And, maybe I'm going to call her up, right? Or, somebody left the toilet seat in a place I didn't like it the other day, and now I'm going to think about that for a while. Or whatever that, whether you're on frustration or anger or worry or stress, or how am I going to pay the bill, or how am I going to, what's going to happen next, and are we going in a good direction? And am I really satisfied? That's one a lot I hear from my clients is, everything's fine, but I'm not really satisfied. It's like, okay, well, let's talk about what we can do in you, right? What's going to happen in you to lift that? Because the world cannot satisfy you until you are satisfiable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that you've connected these energy centers for us with the feelings, right? It's a big deal. Most people don't know about them, right? So that we allow ourselves to be bigger than our bodies in order to get to that easy way, right? Because that's what we're looking for here is how do we do it easily? How do we make it not hard?
I think you tapped into that with the dishwasher moments. I mean, knowing that every moment we have, are you doing laundry? Are you grumbling about doing the laundry? Or are you present with what you're telling yourself? Are you setting intentions while you're doing the laundry? Are you paying gratitude? You have washing machine in your home while you're doing the laundry. Like there are so many different times. The shower, I feel, is such a sacred time because I know that, usually people shower in the morning and the to-do list is going in their head, or I'm going to see this person and they're going to say that, or, like it's just like this ongoing cycle. But yet here we have this sacred element, water, literally washing us clean. That's such a moment for meditation, for however that looks for you, whether that's gratitude, whether that's hand on your heart, recalling a beautiful moment, whatever that is, it's such a beautiful moment. So knowing it doesn't have to be, so many people think a spiritual practice is, sitting lotus style for an hour meditating. That's one way. There's a lot of other ways to do it. It's walking out in nature. It's every single moment is an opportunity. When you're in the car, are you listening to the news? Probably not the best thing to do. Is there a positive podcast? Can you put on Donna Lynn and listen to her? Can you do something that's going to inspire you and make you feel good? Every moment is an opportunity. And sometimes you can set an alarm a couple times a day and just bring yourself to the present moment and be like, where has my mind been the last 5 minutes? Am I here? I'm here, I am safe. Let me do these next 2 moments of breathing. Let me do, 1 minute of gratitude. It doesn't have to be all day or an hour a day. It can be these little moments throughout the day. It changes your energy because you're consciously choosing. I always think of like our thoughts are like these, we have 60,000 a day. So they're like sending out these scrambled signals all the time. But when we set intention, when we get present, we're really sending out that straight signal for what we want. So easy is being like, it can be a minute here, it can be a minute there. It doesn't have to be this concentrated, carved out time all the time. That's beautiful. If you can make that too, go for it. If you could do yoga for half an hour a day or qigong or something like that, that'll add to it. But it's not necessary to live like a happy, aligned life. We can take these little moments before bed, when we wake up. Those are huge moments. Our subconscious is tuned in. Are you repeating the things on your list that you didn't do that day, and lamenting that you'll have to do them the next day? Are you grateful for the things that you got done? Are you grateful that you're lying in a comfy bed? So knowing that like easy just can mean it can be really short. It can be these little moments that we choose. Washing dishes is a perfect one. Doing laundry, brushing our teeth. These things where we're half in, half out anyway, but we can bring ourselves really to the present moment kind of easily then, and recognize, okay, how am I feeling? How am I feeling today? What can I do for myself in the next, 5 minutes or throughout the day to make my day a little better? So yeah, I think that's like how I connect with easy.
So getting into this concept of unlimited power, for me, that sensation and actual experience of power beyond what I feel is normal in my life, right? That's that feeling. It really stems from me being willing to prioritize happiness, joy, right? And when I prioritize that and I get myself into the place, what happens for most people is like they something happens, they feel good, they laugh for a few minutes, maybe even they have like side splitting laughter, they're so excited, it's really great. And then 5 minutes later they're like, come on, we got to get serious, come on, we got to be in the world, right? So when I'm willing to be more than the amount of joy that is normal in our lives, right? When I'm willing to feel it and then feel it some more and then feel it some more and then feel it some more. And when life comes along and kind of smacks me in the face and says, don't you be feeling all excited like that. You just relax. You just sit down and you start thinking about how guilty you should feel for feeling this good anyway. You sit in the corner and think about that for a few minutes because life does that, right? It says to you, as partners do, and right, I don't feel good. Why should you feel so good? And so when we get to that point where we're willing to say, hey, you know what? I'm willing to not hurt you in my feeling good, but I'm also willing to not feel good, to actually feel good and be willing to do that over and over and over again. And for me, that's where that unlimited power comes in, because we're sort of consistently tapped into something larger than ourselves. tell us a little bit about your relationship to that sense of power.
I do feel like you nailed that with joy gives us that sense of unlimited freedom and power. I connect freedom with power. Like if we're free to do, what we feel like we're wanting to be authentic, to say, to do, that's power. And how do we tap into that? That is by joy. That is by taking time to recognize where we even are, and as sensitive beings, yeah, we do. We can look at the news or see things and feel almost guilty for feeling good, but that doesn't help anybody. If we're feeling disempowered, we can't help anybody. It starts with ourselves, but then we can't help anyone else either. So giving ourselves that permission, like the Marianne Williamson quote, it's not our darkness that scares us, it's our light. Really knowing that we are meant to shine. And the only one that can give ourselves that permission is us. And it's feeling that self love and it's feeling that self worth. And that does mean giving yourself permission for the joy. How do you feel joy? Getting really real about that and writing that list 10 things that bring you joy. They're there, they might have been buried and you might have put them off for a long time, but they're there and they're waiting to be expressed. And the more we're in that state, we're in flow. And we know when we're in that flow, that is power. We get divine inspiration. We can do things 10 to 100 times faster than we did, if we're in that forcing mode. It really comes from that place of that heart, that connection to everything. And it's not power over someone, it's power like within all of us. It's like the power that almost connects us all, and we're feeling it. It's like we're feeling that in our bodies, and it's just allowing us to be that light. And if you have a partner that doesn't like to see you enjoy, well, you might want to look there too, because like
Hey, we all get in a bad mood sometimes. You know what I mean?
all
We all get in
get
a bad mood
we
sometimes.
all get in a bad mood sometimes,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it'd be like you are more likely to inspire that other person by being in a good mood rather than by going down that rabbit hole with them. Really by you standing in your joy, get them dancing with you in the kitchen, like whatever it is to really like just bring that other person up. Yeah, we don't help anyone by like really going down that dark hole. It's one thing to hold space and empathy, of course. We want to be heard when we're not in that top space because we've all gone there and go there. We're human. But really, how do you bring yourself to joy every single day, to tap into that power of source energy and to the interconnectedness? Because I do feel like that's how we're all healing, ourselves, but also like the world, is really by knowing that power and knowing that the freedom that it can bring all of us.
It has been such a pleasure to have you with me here today. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about how we can get in touch with you. How can our audience get in touch with you?
Sure. I'm at jennymannion.com and I have a free 7-day chakra class. I have an online community where I do a free monthly healing for people, energy healing. I have a women's group through there. And that's donation based. So I like to help people. I want to give people easy tools, so they can live in happiness and just keep spreading that joy. That's what we all need right now, is just to keep spreading that joy.
That's great. And I want to, of course, remind everybody that you can go to my website and take the 2-minute quiz at donnalyn.blog. That's your joy quiz. Where are you on the roadmap to joy? And there are a lot of outcomes that you could have there and a lot of good information about how to get from where you are to where you want to be on that journey. And of course, if you want to do an in-depth joy application, you're welcome to do that at joyousonpurpose.com. So thank you so much for being here today, Jenny. What a
Thank
pleasure
you,
it has been.
It's been such a joy.